Let me tell you something today that might just shake the doubt right out of you. You are stronger than you think. I'm not just trying to hype you up. This isn't empty motivation. This is truth, deep, soul-level truth. Because you've been walking around acting like you're weak, like you're barely getting by, like you've got nothing left in the tank. But the reason you haven't quit yet is because there's more in you than you realize. You've cried, you've struggled, you've been through storms that would have sunk other people's ships, but you're still here. That's not weakness. That's strength disguised as survival. Don't let the enemy trick you into thinking that because you feel tired, you're done. No, tired doesn't mean finished. Broken doesn't mean unusable. Doubt doesn't cancel destiny. There is a strength in you that hasn't even been activated yet. Sometimes God doesn't take the obstacle away not because he wants to see you suffer, but because he wants to show you what he put in you. See, pressure doesn't destroy diamonds, it creates them. And maybe, just maybe, the reason it's felt so heavy lately is because something valuable is being formed inside of you. You've been praying for strength, but strength doesn't show up until resistance shows up. You've been asking for purpose, but purpose often hides in the places you're trying to escape from. So stop saying, "I can't take this." You already are taking it. You're in it. You're still standing. You're still breathing. That's proof that you've got more strength than you've been giving yourself credit for. Don't confuse the silence of God with the absence of God. Sometimes the teacher stays silent during the test, but that doesn't mean you're not being equipped. It means you're being proven. You're stronger than you think, not because of your own might, but because of the one who put strength in you before you even knew you needed it. So walk out of here today with your head high, not because life is easy, but because grace is real. You're stronger than your past, stronger than your fear, stronger than the voice that says, "You're not enough." And when the doubt comes back, and it will, you remind it who you are. Say it with me, I'm not weak, I'm a warrior, I'm not finished, I'm just getting started, I'm not defeated, I'm being developed. Because I'm stronger than I think, and so are you. You're still standing. That's proof you're stronger than you think. Think about that for a second. After everything you've been through, after all the nights you laid awake wondering how it would ever get better, after all the moments you felt like you were about to break, you're still here. That means something. That means everything, because survival is strength in disguise. Endurance isn't weakness. It's evidence. It's the proof that while life may have hit hard, you didn't stay down. People see the surface, you showing up, going through your day, doing what you've got to do. But they don't see what it took just to get out of bed. They don't see the weight you're carrying. They don't see the battles in your mind that you're fighting silently. But I want to tell you, just because they don't see it doesn't mean it's not real. And just because you don't always feel strong doesn't mean you're not. Strength isn't always loud. It's not always a shout, a victory lap, a mountain top moment. Sometimes strength looks like whispering, "I'm still here," when everything in you wanted to disappear. Strength isn't just lifting heavy things or charging through battles. Strength is choosing not to give up when everything around you says it would be easier to let go. Strength is showing up to life when you feel like hiding. It's being kind when you're hurting. It's believing for something better when all you've seen is disappointment. So many people talk about strength like it's something you only find in success, but real strength shows up when nobody is clapping for you, when the lights are off, when the room is empty, and you still decide to keep going. You've lived through things that people couldn't even imagine: loss, disappointment, betrayal, anxiety, grief, but you kept moving forward, even if you crawled, even if you stumbled, even if you had to fake a smile while your heart was breaking. You didn't quit. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength the world doesn't celebrate enough. And maybe you haven't heard this lately, but just because you're not where you thought you'd be doesn't mean you're lost. Sometimes progress is hard to measure when you're in the middle of the process. You're judging yourself because you're not at the finish line yet. But what you're forgetting is that just making it through this part, this middle part, the in-between, the stretch where it's hard to breathe sometimes, is strength in its purest form. Sometimes we get so focused on the outcomes we miss the evidence. You're still breathing, that's evidence. You're still loving after being hurt, that's evidence. You're still praying after seasons of silence. That's evidence. You're still opening your heart to people after being let down. That's evidence. You're still dreaming even if the dream has changed shape. That's evidence. And here's what's wild. You think your strength showed up in the times you were bold, but it was actually in the times you were scared and did it anyway. You think strength was when you won, but it was really when you lost and didn't let that loss define you. You think it's only there when you're confident, but it's also there in the trembling voice that says, I'll try again. You may not feel powerful. You may feel like everything in your life is falling apart. But the fact that you're still showing up to your life, still trying, still caring, still believing, that's strength, that's power, that's resilience, and that's more valuable than you even realize. Don't underestimate what it means to endure. Endurance isn't passive. It's not just waiting around. Endurance is an act of war. It's saying, I refuse to give up on who I'm becoming, no matter how long it takes. It's resistance against the lies that say you'll never make it. It's defiance in the face of fear. It's standing your ground when every part of you wants to run. Sometimes you won't get applause for your strength. Sometimes nobody will even notice, but you'll know. You'll know because you're still standing in a place you thought you wouldn't survive. You'll know because you've felt the heat of the fire and you're still not consumed. You'll know because the storm came, but you're still on your feet. Maybe soaking wet, maybe shivering, but on your feet. People might ask, how are you still standing? And sometimes you won't even have an answer. You'll just say, I don't know, I just kept going. That's more powerful than you think. Because strength isn't always logical. It's not always visible. Sometimes it's spiritual. Sometimes it's internal. Sometimes it's just grace. The enemy wants you to forget your victories. He wants you to focus on how far you have to go, not how far you've come. But look back, remember what you survived. Remember who you used to be. You're not that person anymore. You've grown, you've matured, you've been forged in fire. You've built muscles you didn't even know you had. Faith muscles, perseverance muscles, courage muscles. You've been in the gym of life, lifting things that most people would have dropped. And yeah, you might be tired. That's okay. Being tired doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been strong for a long time. It means you've been carrying weight most people never saw. It means you've been faithful when it would have been easier to walk away. It means you didn't quit when quitting was the more convenient option. There's more strength in you than you're aware of, more endurance, more resilience. And just because you haven't seen the full harvest yet doesn't mean the seeds haven't been planted. Some of the strongest people are the ones who look the calmest on the outside because they've fought wars inside that would have crushed others. So next time you start to doubt your worth, next time you hear that voice whisper you're not enough, remember what you've already walked through. Remember that you've made it this far. You're not the same person you were a year ago. You're not the same person you were 6 months ago. You've been growing, even if it's been in silence. You've been stretching, even if no one applauded. You've been becoming, you've been healing, you've been climbing, even with trembling legs. You've been through dark valleys and still found light. You've been through seasons where everything around you said give up, and yet you stayed. You stayed the course, you stayed faithful, you stayed present, you stayed believing. Pressure doesn't destroy you, it reveals what's inside you. Most people run from pressure. Most people see it as a sign that something's wrong, that life is out of control, that they're about to break. But what if pressure wasn't punishment? What if it was preparation? What if the pressure you feel right now is not there to crush you, but to call something out of you that's been buried deep under fear, doubt, comfort, and routine? Because here's the truth. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes strength, and the weight you're carrying isn't proof that you're failing. It's proof that something valuable is being refined. See, nobody puts pressure on something worthless. Nobody squeezes something that doesn't have potential. We apply pressure to fruit to bring out the juice. We put gold through fire to burn away impurities. Diamonds, you know this. They're made under intense pressure and heat. And you've been praying to be stronger, braver, more impactful, but you didn't know that the answer might show up looking like pressure, that maybe God didn't send the pressure to break you, maybe He sent it to build you. Because what's inside you can't be developed in comfort. You don't find out how strong your faith is when everything is easy. You find out when things don't go your way, when the answer is no or not yet, when the door closes. When the people leave, that's when what's real starts to rise. That's when the excuses fall off and your true identity begins to emerge. Pressure is a purifier. It strips away what doesn't belong. It tightens your focus. It awakens something dormant inside of you. You thought you were soft. You thought you were fragile. You thought that setback was going to break you, but it didn't. It revealed the fight in you, the grit, the resilience, the capacity to keep moving forward when you don't have the full picture. It's not that you weren't strong before, you just didn't know it, but pressure has a way of pushing you to discover muscles you never had to use before. It makes you lift heavier emotionally, spiritually, and mentally than you thought you could, and in the lifting you grow. Some people crack under pressure, but some people break through. And it's not because their situation is easier, it's because they've made a decision to trust what's being formed inside of them is greater than what's coming against them. You can either let pressure push you down or let it push you deeper into your purpose. You can either let it shrink you or shape you, and let's be honest, pressure isn't comfortable, it's not fun, it's not something we ask for, but it is necessary. Think about a seed. It gets planted in darkness, buried under layers of soil, pressed by the earth. And in that tight, dark space, the pressure begins to do its work. The seed starts to break open, not because it's dying, but because it's starting to live. The breaking was necessary for the becoming. That's what pressure does. It breaks things open, not to destroy, but to release. You might feel like everything around you is closing in, like there's not enough space to breathe. But maybe that constriction isn't a coffin, it's a womb. Maybe what feels like the end is really a beginning, a tight place, a transitional place, the kind of place where identity gets forged and callings get clarified. The greatest oil comes from the crushing of olives. The richest wine flows after the pressing of grapes. The anointing that people carry doesn't come from ease, it comes from pressure. That's why you don't need to envy someone's platform if you haven't seen their process. Don't wish for someone's results if you haven't witnessed their pressure. You want elevation, but elevation comes with weight, with pressure, with responsibility, and God in His mercy will apply pressure before He promotes you, so that when you rise rooted, so that your character can carry what your calling requires. Sometimes you think you're being punished, but you're really being prepared. You're being conditioned. God isn't trying to hurt you. He's strengthening you. And He knows that what He placed inside of you can handle more than you think. The pressure didn't come to kill you. It came to confirm what's already in you. Faith, strength, courage, endurance. It was always there. The pressure just brought it to the surface. And maybe you're in a season right now where you feel like everything's piling on at once. Deadlines, decisions, disappointments, detours. You keep saying, I can't take one more thing. But somehow, one more thing shows up, and guess what? You take it. Not perfectly, not without emotion, but you take it. And that's not weakness. That's capacity being stretched. That's proof that you're not as fragile as you think. You've been trained by the trials. Equipped by the stretching, you're stronger, deeper, wiser. The pressure isn't permanent, but it is purposeful. Don't waste it. Don't run from it. Lean into it. Ask what it's teaching you. Ask what it's growing in you. Because there are some versions of you stronger, bolder, more focused versions that only emerge under pressure. You can't pray your way around it. You grow your way through it. Pressure is where you meet the end of yourself and the beginning of grace. It's where your ability fails and divine strength takes over. It's where you stop pretending and start becoming. It's where God takes everything that was meant to crush you and uses it to construct you. It's the classroom where champions are built. It's the weight room of faith, the battlefield of identity, and every minute you're still standing in that pressure is proof that something holy is happening inside of you. It's not about getting out of the pressure as fast as possible. It's about staying in it long enough to let it work. Let it deepen your character. Let it strengthen your integrity. Let it strip off what you thought you needed so you can finally carry what you were born to carry. Let it press out the fear. Let it press out the pride. Let it press out the need to control everything and make room for something greater to emerge. Don't be afraid of the pressure. The pressure is proof you're on the edge of something new. The pressure means something is shifting, something is rising, something is moving in you, and yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's also unstoppable, because once God starts the transformation process, nothing can stop what's about to break forth from the inside of you. Tired doesn't mean finished. Your strength shows up in resistance. There's a lie that too many people believe, that if you're tired, you must be weak, you must be done, you must not have what it takes. But tired is not the same as finished. Feeling weary doesn't mean you've lost the fight. It means you've been in the fight. It means you've been moving, pushing, carrying, enduring. You don't get tired doing nothing. You get tired when you've been showing up, when you've been doing the hard work, when you've been trying to stay faithful in the middle of a struggle that nobody else can see. You've been waking up and doing what you need to do even when you didn't feel like it. You've been loving people who didn't love you back. You've been forgiving when you had every reason to hold a grudge. You've been holding on to faith when doubt was screaming in your ears. You've been trying to heal, to grow, to evolve, to keep your peace, to stay grounded. No wonder you're tired. That's not failure. That's the cost of progress. That's what resistance feels like when you're building something real. Strength doesn't show up when everything is easy. Strength shows up when everything in you wants to quit and you choose to keep going anyway. Resistance is the gym where faith grows muscle. It's the tension that stretches you beyond what's comfortable. The same way an athlete builds endurance through repeated resistance. You're building inner strength through every situation that demands more than you think you have to give. It's not the absence of fatigue that makes you strong. It's the ability to keep moving even while you're carrying the weight of that fatigue. There's this voice that starts whispering when you get tired. It says, "You're done. You've lost your edge. You can't handle this anymore. You're not cut out for this." But that voice is a liar. That voice wants to convince you that because you feel worn out, you're no longer worthy. But the truth is, your worth is not based on your energy level. Your calling doesn't expire when your strength dips. Being tired is not a disqualification. It's an invitation to dig deeper, to tap into a strength that's not built on hype, but on grit. If you were never tired, how would you know what you're made of? If life never pushed back, how would you develop resilience? The pressure you're under right now, the exhaustion you feel, it's not a sign that you're off track. It could be the clearest sign that you're right where you need to be, doing the thing that actually matters. Because things that matter are heavy. They take effort, they cost something, and yes, they will wear you down sometimes. But just because you're tired doesn't mean you're not effective. Look at the people who inspire you the most. They're not people who avoided hardship. They're people who kept showing up through it. They had seasons where they didn't know if they could keep going, but they did. They had moments where they felt unseen, unappreciated, and exhausted, but they didn't give up. That's the strength that shows up in resistance. That's what builds legacy, not perfection, not non-stop energy, but persistence. And it's okay to feel like you're at the end of your rope. Sometimes the edge is where real strength gets born, when you don't have the same energy, but you have more focus, when you don't have the same drive, but you have more depth. When you don't have the adrenaline anymore, but you've developed endurance. That's a different level of strength. That's maturity. That's what separates people who start strong from people who finish strong. You see, starting is easy. It's exciting. It's fresh. There's momentum. But resistance shows up in the middle, in the messy part. In the part where the results don't match the effort. In the part where the novelty wears off and all that's left is discipline. In the part where you don't feel like it, but you still do it anyway. That's where strength is built. That's where character is formed. That's where your foundation is tested and solidified. And don't mistake rest for weakness. Rest is not quitting. Rest is strategy. Even Jesus withdrew to rest. Even the strongest need to breathe. You don't have to be on all the time to be faithful. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is take a break, not because you're giving up, but because you're preparing for the next round. Rest doesn't mean defeat. It means you understand that longevity matters more than intensity. You can burn bright for a moment or burn steady for a lifetime, but you can't do both without learning how to rest when you're tired. Some people give up when they're tired because they think that means it's over. But the people who keep going, they've learned how to be tired and disciplined, tired and focused, tired and faithful. They've learned how to walk when they can't run, how to whisper when they've lost their voice, how to pray even when the words don't come easily. That's not weakness, that's next-level strength. That's the kind of strength that doesn't shout, it just endures. You don't have to feel powerful to be powerful. You don't have to feel fearless to be brave. And you don't have to feel strong to act with strength. Strength shows up in resistance, not because everything is going right, but because you're still choosing to show up even when it's not. That's what makes you dangerous to the enemy. That's what makes you unstoppable, not the feeling, but the decision. Resistance is refining you. It's burning away your dependence on motivation and replacing it with discipline. It's stripping away your need for applause and anchoring you in purpose. It's teaching you how to rely on deeper wells. The shallow stuff dries up when you're tired, but the deep stuff keeps flowing. Grace keeps flowing. Purpose keeps flowing. Even when your hands are trembling and your eyes are heavy and your heart is uncertain, there's something in you that keeps moving. You may not see it right now, but something is growing inside of you. Every moment of resistance is building something invisible but unshakable. Every tired step forward is proof that your foundation is holding. Every decision to keep going, even when you're empty, is storing up strength for a break through you can't yet see. You're becoming someone that pressure can't break and fatigue can't silence. And yes, you're tired, but tired isn't the same as finished. Tired means you've been carrying something that matters. Tired means you've been faithful to something bigger than yourself. Tired means you've stayed the course when quitting would have been easier. Tired means your strength has been activated in the face of resistance. Fear is loud, but faith doesn't need to shout to win. Fear knows how to make noise. It knows how to get in your head, how to use the echo of your own doubts against you, how to amplify every worst-case scenario until it feels like the only possible outcome. Fear comes with a voice, and it's never silent. It talks at 2 a.m. when the room is quiet and your mind won't stop racing. It shows up in the middle of your progress, whispering that it won't be enough. It screams at the start line of every dream, shouting about everything that could go wrong before you even take the first step. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't need evidence. All fear needs is a little access, and it will turn a whisper of worry into a wall of panic if you let it. But just because fear is loud doesn't mean it's telling the truth. And just because it shouts doesn't mean it has authority. Sometimes the most powerful voice in your life isn't the one that's the loudest. It's the one that's the most grounded. That's faith. Faith doesn't have to match fear's volume to be effective. It doesn't have to shout over every doubt to still be stronger. Faith moves in quiet confidence. Faith doesn't come with panic. It comes with peace. It's not always the firework. Sometimes it's the whisper. The stillness, the knowing that's deeper than the noise. The problem is we often confuse volume with validity. We think that because fear is louder, it must be right. But truth isn't always the loudest voice. Truth doesn't always show up in all caps. Sometimes it's the gentle reminder in the back of your heart that says, you've made it through worse. Sometimes it's the small push that says, take the step anyway. Faith doesn't try to drown out fear. It simply refuses to bow to it. It recognizes the presence of fear without giving it power. When fear gets loud, faith doesn't argue. Faith just stands. When fear lists every reason why it won't work, faith remembers one promise. When fear builds walls, faith builds bridges. And you have to decide which voice you're going to follow, because both voices are speaking, but only one is leading you forward. Fear will paralyze you in your past, but faith will propel you into your purpose. Think about the stories that changed everything. the breakthroughs, the miracles, the moments where destiny turned a corner. Almost every one of them started in a place where fear could have won, where someone had every reason to stay silent, stay still, stay safe, but instead they moved, not because fear left, but because faith led. That's the difference. Faith doesn't wait for fear to disappear, it acts in spite of it. It moves while the voice is still screaming. It chooses hope when doubt is louder. That's courage. That's where transformation begins, not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of faith, and faith isn't always flashy. Sometimes it's holding your ground when everything says run. Sometimes it's saying yes when your voice is shaking. Sometimes it's praying one more time, showing up one more time, believing one more time even when nothing looks different. Faith isn't always loud, but it's always loyal. It stays when it's hard. It speaks when it's risky. It builds when there's no blueprint. It invests when there's no guarantee. That kind of faith might not make headlines, but it moves heaven. Fear will always try to make you focus on outcomes you can't control. That's how it wins, by keeping your mind in tomorrow while draining your strength for today. But faith is rooted in the present. It's not obsessed with how everything will turn out. It trusts who's holding it all together. It doesn't need every answer to take the next step. It just needs one word, one nudge, one belief that what's ahead is worth walking through the uncertainty. For fear is loud because it's desperate. It senses the shift. It knows you're about to break through, so it turns up the volume to try and convince you to turn back. But if you'll stop listening to how loud fear is and start leaning into how real faith is, you'll realize something. Faith is stronger. Always, fear talks, faith walks, fear yells, faith builds, fear predicts the fall. Faith prepares for the flight. You're not weak because you feel afraid. You're human, but you're powerful because you can feel afraid and still choose to act in faith. That's what strength looks like. Not never feeling fear, but never being owned by it. And sometimes faith feels like the smallest seed. Sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. But you'd be surprised what God can grow from a seed that's planted, even in shaky soil. Even when your knees are trembling, even when your voice is barely above a whisper, because the volume of your faith isn't what moves mountains. It's the object of your faith. It's not how loud you pray. It's who you're praying to. Faith grows in silence. It matures in resistance. It builds its roots in the quiet place, in the middle of uncertainty, in the tension between not yet and maybe never. And while fear tries to make you reactive, faith makes you rooted. It settles you, grounds you, anchors you to truth when everything else is shaking. There's a kind of faith that doesn't flinch. A kind of faith that stares fear in the face and says, "You're loud, but you're not Lord." The kind of faith that walks into the fire and says, "Even if I don't come out the way I expected, I know who's in here with me." That's not the kind of faith that needs hype. That's the kind of faith that's built on history. It's been through storms before. It's seen fear fall before. And it knows that the same God who got you through what you thought would take you out is the same God who's walking with you now. Don't wait for fear to go silent before you move. Just let faith speak louder in your spirit than fear does in your mind. Let it guide your steps, even if your heart is still racing. Let it shape your choices, even if your emotions are shaky, because fear might get your attention, but faith gets the final word. Fear may come in the front door, but faith holds the keys. And when faith is in the room, fear can't stay in charge. It's not about pretending fear isn't real. It's about remembering it's not in control. You can hear it and not heed it. You can feel it and still move forward. You can acknowledge its presence without giving it your power. And every time you do that, every time you choose faith over fear, you're building spiritual muscle. You're changing your internal volume. You're tuning your ear to the frequency of hope instead of panic. You're letting the quiet strength of faith lead you into places that fear told you were impossible. ChatGPT said, "Pain is not the proof that you're losing. Sometimes it's the signal that you're growing." It's easy to believe that pain is a punishment, that it's a sign that something's gone wrong, that you've missed the mark or made a wrong turn. But pain isn't always the enemy. Sometimes pain is the very proof that something inside you is shifting, stretching, transforming. It's the evidence that your soul is in the middle of a renovation project, because growth is not comfortable. Growth costs. Growth takes you to the edge of what you thought you could handle, and then asks you to step further. And pain is often the voice of that stretching, the same way a muscle breaks before it builds. Your spirit sometimes has to go through a breaking season to make room for strength you never knew you had. When you're lifting something heavier than you've ever carried, your body trembles under the pressure, but trembling doesn't mean failure. It means you're building capacity, and sometimes your soul does the same. You're carrying burdens that stretch your emotional and spiritual limits, and it hurts. Not because you're weak, but because you're growing beyond what you used to be able to hold. We think that growth should feel good, but that's a myth. Growth often comes disguised as discomfort, as heartbreak, as loss, as disappointment. You pray for more faith, and God doesn't hand you faith like a gift wrapped in a bow. He walks you through situations that force you to live by faith. You pray for strength, and you find yourself in a season where strength is your only option. You pray for peace, and everything chaotic comes to the surface, so you have no choice but to anchor in something deeper. Growth doesn't show up with a welcome mat. It shows up with pressure, with disruption, with pain, and when you feel that pain, the first instinct is often to retreat, to pull back, to assume something is wrong. But what if the pain is not a stop sign? What if it's a green light? What if it's a signal that you're finally leaving the shallow end and stepping into the deep? Because you don't grow in safety, you grow in struggle. Not because struggle is good in and of itself, but because it creates the conditions where faith is no longer optional. It's essential. Pain is not always punishment. Sometimes it's preparation. Look back at the most pivotal moments in your life, the ones that reshaped you, redefined you, refined you. Were they wrapped in comfort, or did they come wrapped in heartbreak, disappointment, or uncertainty? Did they come when everything was going right, or when it felt like everything was falling apart? You don't discover what you're made of when it's easy. You discover it when you're walking through fire. You don't uncover your deepest convictions when everything feels good. You uncover them when pain forces you to dig deeper than surface level faith. Pain has a way of clarifying. It strips away what's superficial. It pulls back the layers of who you thought you had to be, so you can finally step into who you were born to be. It doesn't feel like a gift when it's happening, but often, in hindsight, you realize it was the catalyst. The turning point, the thing that shook you awake, the thing that made you stop settling, the thing that pushed you toward healing. The thing that helped you discover a strength you never would have accessed if everything had stayed comfortable. And it's not just about personal development, it's spiritual too. Pain often becomes the place where God speaks the loudest. Not because he needs you to suffer, but because sometimes that's the only time you slow down enough to really listen. In the silence of pain, in the rawness of brokenness, when there's nothing left to hide behind, that's where truth can finally be heard. That's where identity is redefined. That's where the masks fall off and the real work begins. God does his best work in broken places. Not in spite of the pain, but through it. You can't avoid pain, but you can decide what you do with it. You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you bold. You can let it shut you down, or you can let it wake you up. You can let it define you by your wounds, or you can let it remind you that wounds heal. And when they do, they make you stronger. Scars aren't signs of defeat. They're evidence that healing happened, that you made it through, that what tried to break you didn't win, that the pain didn't get the final say. Pain can be a teacher, a mentor, a forge. It doesn't speak in the language of comfort, but in the language of transformation. And if you're in pain right now, it doesn't mean you're behind. It doesn't mean you're failing. It might mean you're right on track. Right in the middle of a growth process that's stretching you beyond the limits of your former self. Right in the middle of a divine transition where something is dying. Not to leave you empty, But to make space for something greater to be born, there's a kind of pain that breaks things open, not apart. It breaks open old mindsets, it breaks open false beliefs, it breaks open shallow faith and pushes you towards something deeper, something real, something lasting. That kind of pain doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to free you, to untangle you from what you thought you needed so you can embrace what actually brings life, to confront the lie that comfort is the goal and remind you that calling is the goal, and calling often costs something. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel every ounce of it. Pain doesn't require you to be numb. It invites you to be honest, to sit in the mess without rushing to escape it, to stop pretending that everything's fine when it's not. But while you're in the pain, don't lose sight of what it's doing in you. It's not just breaking you down, it's building something new. You might not see it yet, but beneath the surface, roots are going deeper. Foundations are being laid, patterns are being broken, new strength is being formed, and when you come out of it, you won't be the same. You'll have a different kind of wisdom, a different kind of compassion, a different kind of strength, one that didn't come from books or lectures or motivational speeches, but from walking through the valley and finding grace right there in the middle of it. One that was formed in the fire and refined by every tear you cried, every prayer you whispered, every moment you thought you couldn't take one more step, but did anyway. This kind of growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't always feel powerful, but it's the kind that lasts, the kind that sustains you when the next storm comes, the kind that doesn't just change your circumstances. It changes you, it roots you, grounds you, prepares you for the weight of your calling, because some callings are so heavy you have to be forged in fire just to carry them, and the pain you're walking through now might just be the preparation for the purpose you're being called to next. Pain isn't the end of your story. It might be the beginning of a new one, a better one, a deeper one, a story where you don't just survive, but where you emerge more whole, more grounded, more alive than ever before, where what tried to crush you becomes the very platform where you rise, where the breaking leads to blessing, where the pain leads to purpose, where the stretching leads to strength, where the tears sow the seeds of something that will one day bear fruit so real, so beautiful, it will make every struggle worth it.